content and is intended for mature audiences only. Please enjoy this feature presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. This program may contain adult content and is intended for mature audiences only.
Welcome to the Nanosecond podcast. With your hosts, Erik Nannarone, Nick Goglioni, and Pat Morrow.
Sorry if I ran a little over top of that. But anyway, welcome to Nanosecond Podcast. I'm Erik.
I'm Pat.
I'm Evan.
And today we have Barry Shuck. Barry, how are you?
I'm doing real well. I'm a staff writer with dogsbynature.com. We've got some talented writers, and we have daily news, and when news comes out, it's on our site, dogsbynature.com. That's DAWGSBY, then the word nature.com. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So let's get into number one. Let's talk about the new Browns offensive line coach. And off the top of my head, I don't remember his last name, but first name Mike.
Bloomgren.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about his background.
His last gig, he came from Rice University, and he was the head coach there. He was head coach for, 6 years. He never had a winning record. The best record that he had was 6-7-0. In 2023, last year he went 4-8-0, but he was the head coach there. His teams went to 2 bowl games while he was there. And before that, he was on the coaching staff of the New York Jets. He went to the Jets when Eric Mangini was head coach before Rex Ryan took over. He ended up being the assistant head coach and offensive line coach with the Jets. And he stayed there until he was hired at Stanford when he became their run game coordinator and offensive line coach. And he did that for 2 years. He coached Andrew Luck and Christian McCaffrey when he was with Stanford. Did you know that?
Yes, that I did.
Yeah. Stanford had exciting teams when he was offensive coordinator there, but that was his second offensive line coaching job, the Jets and Stanford, to go along with other jobs that he had. Before that, he was with some D2 schools, Delta State University, Catawba College in Salisbury, North Carolina. He grew up in Tallahassee, where he was a tight end, and played college football for 2 years, and then went to Florida State and got his degree. He graduated magna cum laude, and when he went from there, he went to the University of Alabama as an assistant coach. And he got his master's degree where he graduated with a 4.0 GPA. So this guy's intelligent, very intelligent.
Wow. Which is good. And it seems like he has a proven track record being where he was. Was he there and Stanford, under Shaw? Or was that after David Shaw?
Yeah, it was after David Shaw.
Okay.
Yeah. And so what he's what he has to do is get this offensive line back together. Because you think about it, Eric, 2 years ago, our offensive line was ranked number 3 in the league. And it's the same 5 guys. It's still Posick at center, Teller and Batonio at guard, Conklin and Wills at tackle. Now, if you take Wills out, he only played 5 games this year. Mm-hmm. Who played left tackle this year was a combination of James Hudson till he got hurt, DeJuan Jones till he got hurt, and then Jermaine Ifedi. So if you take Wills out of the equation and insert any of those 3 guys, it's the same 4 guys that were ranked number 3 in the league just 2 years ago. Now, Evan, Pat, what's the common denominator that makes him go from the number 3 unit? This year we had 66 sacks allowed, second most in the league. What is the common denominator that dropped him from number 3 unit in the league to 31st?
I'll go first.
All right.
From pretty much the get-go this year, the first snap of the first the first practice session, I said that coaching staff was a stinking mess.
Really?
I've said that. You could tell by the body language on the field. You could tell by the players' reaction to that stuff, and it was a mess. And that was, to me, what was causing the biggest part of the Browns' issue, at least as far as the win-loss things go. There was no continuity with that coaching staff, and it only happened after they brought Dorsey in here. Don't you think so? Don't you think so, Barry?
Well, the coaching staff was different. I mean, when they got rid of Stump Mitchell,
I hated to see him go. I hated to see that guy go.
Yeah, I was absolutely shocked. I was absolutely shocked that they let him go. He developed Nick Chubb. He developed Jerome Ford. I'm not saying Jerome Ford is an all-league guy, but still he was a 5th-round pick that is starting. He developed, Nick Chubb into the runner that he is. What do you think, Evan?
I agree. What was it that motivated Bill Callahan to leave? He had that unit working great, and then when he left, we ended up where we are right now. So, I mean, was it really all that coaching that Bill Callahan did?
Oh yeah, because you look at all the line combinations that we constantly. How many times was Jack Conklin hurt?
And that's another thing. You had Conklin out half the year. You had Wills out half the year, and we seem to go through this BS every stinking year. It's been the last 2 or 3 years anyway. All you're dealing with is broken players by the time, you go through 4 quarterbacks in a year for 2 years in a row now. Yeah. How are you going to build any continuity like that? Yeah. Not to mention the fact that you didn't have a continuity builder in there to begin with.
Yeah. Actually, the Browns broke a record this year for quarterbacks. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
They started the most quarterbacks in consecutive NFL seasons in the history. The NFL's been a league since 1920. They started 5 last year, which tied the 1987 New England Patriots for most starting quarterbacks in a single season. Then they started 4. When they started Bailey Zappi in the final game, that was 4 quarterbacks. That's 9 quarterbacks in 2 seasons. And no NFL team has ever started that many quarterbacks in consecutive seasons.
That's our Browns.
That's our Browns.
Yep.
I hate to sound so negative in that. especially as this last year went. But you could see, you didn't have to, it wasn't rocket science to see this stuff. I don't really have that much of an insight into that team when it's in practices and that. I watch a lot of the stuff that's, on the news. I see stuff I follow some videos on YouTube, stuff like that. But it just was so apparent as to what was going on. And
Yeah.
I was willing to give Dorsey a try because I thought he got kind of a raw deal out of the Jets. And, once he got here, you could see what the issues were. It wasn't much to see.
Yeah. Well, he didn't have much success at Buffalo.
The other one.
Evan Pat just said he was going to be negative about a 14-loss team. What do you think?
I don't know if I can add any more. I mean, geez Louise, we've gone through a lot of turmoil over the last 2 years. 1 in 30, 31.
1 in 32.
The other, a couple of
1
years
in
back.
31, yeah.
Pretty harsh.
Yeah, it is.
But, the one that what the Browns this year and the last couple of years have come down to is this, there needs to be some strength in coaching there or something that is going to keep these guys from getting so beat up. Even when it comes to like a Denzel Ward, how often did he get taken off the field?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't help that he's always concussed.
Well, there you go.
True.
But
True. And
how do you stop it? How do you stop a concussion, though? Sorry to cut you off, Barry.
he's had 5 concussions, and I really thought after his 5th concussion that he was going to retire, but before the season started, he said no, and he ended up with another Pro Bowl.
Well, he's a good player. The thing that I guess we have to look for now, what do you think they're going to do with Deshaun?
What do I think they're going to do with him?
Yeah, are they going to let him play?
Oh yeah, he's the Browns' starting quarterback for the next 2 years. As soon as now his Achilles injury got put back a little bit this week, but if it hadn't have been, he would have been ready by training camp. An Achilles usually takes until like April or May, so July. I don't know when he's going to be ready, but if he's ready for the season, they are going to play him and they are going to start him. You can't pay a guy $46 million to ride a bicycle on the sideline or to hold a clipboard or to sit on the bench. You can't pay a guy $46 million not to play. You just can't. And if you bring in somebody that's any good, now I'm not talking about a Jameis Winston, I'm not talking about a Daniel Jones, maybe even a Justin Fields. If you bring in a guy like that, are you going to pay him $20 million and play Deshaun $46 million? How can they afford to put $70 million into one position and only pay one guy? You can't. That's why they bring in somebody like Jameis and pay them $5 million, because they can afford that. They can afford DTR at a 5th round rookie salary versus Deshaun's $46 million. Now, they did restructure. They did move some money around. But the whole point is they're going to pay him that money, and they're not going to let him sit down. They're still got the hopes that he will go back to his elite status that he was when he was with the Texans and while he was with the University of Clemson.
Did you hear that they took when they restructured him this last time, they took out an insurance policy on him?
Yeah.
For about what,
almost $50 million.
48.3, something like that. If he doesn't play a snap in 2025, they get that money. And that will have supposedly affect the cap space too. The way I read that. To me, that's a win-win situation. Leave his ass sit on the sit on the bench. You know, if
It
he's
is.
hurt, he's hurt. You're
Yeah,
still
and part of the reason that I feel that he's going to start, not only is he making all that money, and you'd have to bring in somebody. If you brought in somebody and paid, let's just say Darnold from, let's just say that they signed him from the Vikings because the Vikings drafted J.J. McCarthy last year. Let's say they bring in Sam Darnold to start. They pay him $30 million. That's $76 million for one position. They can't do that. But secondly, if they don't play Deshaun, then somebody in the Browns has to admit that the trade was bad.
well, from what I understood here, on one of the things that I get off of the news feeds, and I'm trying to quote, we may have made a mistake with Deshaun Watson and the trade did not turn out like we expected.
Was that Andrew Berry?
That was Andrew Berry.
Yeah, Andrew Berry is who pushed that. I'm not saying the Haslams didn't sign off on it. They did, including Dee. I remember it was such a big deal when Dee Haslam announced that she was okay with the trade and she studied it and all these allegations and all these lawsuits. She read over them and all the paperwork and the depositions, and
Yeah, I remember
she was
that.
okay. As a woman, she was okay with it. I think Stefanski had very little to do with it. I think he just, was on the jet ride for the meal and the free champagne. I don't know, but I think Andrew Berry is who pushed it. But look, at the time, Deshaun Watson threw for almost 5,000 yards in a single season. He had 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. That was his last season. The season before last, he made the Pro Bowl. He made 3 straight Pro Bowls. And his last season where he threw for 5,000 yards, that was for a 4-win team, which means he didn't have a good tight end. He didn't have a good offensive line. He didn't have a good running back. All he had was DeAndre Hopkins. So if he could do that for a 4-win team, at the time he was a top 5 quarterback. Now the question is, what happened when he got to Cleveland?
What happens to any quarterback when they get to Cleveland?
They fall apart. Talk to the other 39 quarterbacks that have been here since 99. They'll tell you. We were talking about the offensive line and how it's been affected since Callahan left. And I forget the assistant offensive line coach under Callahan, but whatever happened to him, Peters, I think his name was, last name. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Assistant offensive line coach?
Yeah, under Callahan.
With the Browns or
Yeah.
with the Tennessee Titans?
No, with the Browns. When he was with the Browns, what happened to the offensive line or assistant that was under Callahan with the Browns? What?
I know the offensive line coach now is Roy Espen. Is that who you're talking about?
No, it was Peters was his last name.
Well,
I'll have to try to look it up.
okay. I don't know.
Okay.
I know that. I know Bill Callahan was the offensive line coach, 2 seasons ago when we had all those good people before Dickerson took over. But I don't know. I don't know, Eric.
Okay. I'll look it up and try to get the name. So, Pat or Evan, go ahead, kind of take over so I can get the name.
Go ahead, Evan. I got my mouth full.
I'm just trying to come up with a question. I mean, we covered a couple of major things. Since Andrew Barry was the architect of this trade, why did he settle on Deshaun Watson other than the stats? Couldn't he find anybody else either doing his scouting in the draft that he thought might be a good up-and-comer, or maybe just someone else who doesn't have the baggage that Deshaun Watson has? You know, let's cover that top.
Is that directed to me?
Yeah, you, Barry. Okay. You're the balance guy here.
Okay. I think that they were looking for a home run is what they were looking for. Now, oh, by the way, the Erik Scott Peters.
Yeah, I just got the name. Yeah.
Yeah, he's on the New England Patriots now. Now, since Mayo got fired, that means that he got fired.
Mm-hmm.
And when the new guy comes in, they rarely keep anybody. Once in a while, they'll keep a guy or two. So he may be fired again.
But why wasn't he in consideration for the line coach job, at least as far as the general public Browns fans know? Why was he not in consideration with Dickerson, being that he was already here?
He from what I understand, he was interviewed. He was one of the first. Yeah, he was one of the first interviews.
Okay.
And then they reached out to the Seahawks and brought in Dickerson. What was your question again, Evan?
Due diligence. I mean, did you know if Andrew Barry had anybody else that he was considering for this blockbuster trade that he ultimately made for Deshaun Watson? Was there anybody out there that he had said, all right, if we're going to go to a Super Bowl, we need this kind of guy with this kind of talent? Do you know if there had been any other candidates that he considered?
I think Baker Mayfield. I think it was either Deshaun or Baker Mayfield. And I think what's odd about this whole Deshaun situation is he actually was traded from the Houston Texans to the Miami Dolphins. And he was going to go to the Dolphins, but the owner of the Dolphins had one thing that Deshaun Watson had to do, and that was get rid of all those lawsuits and all those women testimony. He wanted every single one. At the time, it was 23 women. He wanted all 23 to be dissolved before he could come to Miami. And that didn't happen. Why it didn't happen, I never found that out. I don't know if Deshaun wasn't willing to settle, or if he was still saying, I didn't do it, I'm still innocent, if he was still clinging to that. I don't know what the circumstances were, but when the owner of the Dolphins discovered that Deshaun wasn't going to get rid of those, the Dolphins axed the trade with the Texans. And it was a similar trade, 3 first rounds, a couple of second rounds, a 5th round for Deshaun Watson. So he actually was going to go to Miami. And then who was in the mix was the Falcons, the Washington football team, all of those teams. And Cleveland initially was in it at first. And then Deshaun Watson said, no, I'm not going to Cleveland. In fact, it was known that he wanted to go to a warm weather city because he was raised in the South. He went to Clemson. Now he's in Houston. And me being northern born and southern raised, that cold is hard to take. It's hard to take the older you get. I'm looking at you, Pat. I'm not looking at Evan. And, you know, it's, and so, but I think the offer, I don't know how the offer came up, but think of it. You know, when somebody offers you not just 230 million, but 230 million, whether you play or not, whether you good or not, whether you're a Pro Bowler or not, whether you're an All-Pro or not, no matter what you do, no matter how many games you play, you can play 9 games this year, 1 game the next year, a full season that you still get 230 million. Who is not going to say, where do I sign?
You touched on a rather bit of a nerve with me with when you said a name there a minute ago, Mr. Mayfield. Let's can we talk about him for a minute?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I keep reading stuff. I follow sports groups on Facebook and some other places.
Okay.
And all these, you've got these people out there. Oh, if Baker was still here, he'd have had us to a Super Bowl. And if Baker this and if Baker that. And look how Baker's doing down there in Tampa. Now, if you don't mind, I want to make a couple points here. And I want to see if you agree with me. Number one, and I've said this on those said groups, Baker with Mayfield would have never, ever matured on the Browns. He would have never been the quarterback he is now because he didn't. With some of these kids when they come out of college like he did, they're punk. Yeah. You know, they're punks, and they've got no reality as to what the profession they're going into is. They're like we used to call them apprentices or newbies. Yeah. And he wouldn't. I don't think if he would have even now if he was on the Browns, he would have never been the quarterback he is now down there, because he didn't take the beat downs until he left here, until he didn't get fired from a couple of teams because he wasn't performing. And then let's take Tampa Bay, who at Tampa Bay had probably the best offense, one of the best offenses in the league, because Tom Brady was there. And they had built that thing for Brady. Hell, I could even have played in that. You know, and I don't see how you're going to make a great quarterback out of Baker because of the fact that he was given that line, and that line was great to begin with. You can win with mediocrity. I mean, back in the day, you look at what Pittsburgh did with Bubby Brister. He was mediocre at the best, and they won Super Bowls with him.
Neil O'Donnell.
That's another one. You know, these people, I don't know where their sense of reality is, but I see stuff for what it is, and I wouldn't have wanted Baker here. Would you have?
Well, there's a famous song that says "Love the one you're with." Yeah. That's exactly what Baker's doing. And any quarterback, it's like, what was the biggest difference between Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith? Emmitt Smith is the NFL career rushing leader all time. But what was the differences between Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith? They played at the same time. Emmitt Smith's got 3 Super Bowls. Barry Sanders doesn't. But what were the biggest differences between the two?
Probably the teams they were on.
Who was their fullback? Who was Barry Sanders' fullback? We know Moose Johnson was Dallas's fullback. Who was Detroit's quarterback? We know Troy Aikman, Pro Bowler, was Emmitt's quarterback. Who was the tight end in Detroit? You know, Dallas's Dallas's tight end went to the Pro Bowl. Name some offensive linemen on the Detroit Lions. You could, every year the Cowboys had Eric Williams going to the Pro Bowl. He had Alvin Harper on one side as receiver, and he had Michael Irvin on the other side, who were receivers in Detroit. The team that surrounded Barry Sanders was just journeymen. It was players that didn't amount to anything. They came and they went. They got paid. They were in the NFL, but they didn't make a lasting impression. That's the way Baker is.
I think we lost Barry.
If he came to a team that had as his left tackle, he just got named to his 4th Pro Bowl this year. Well, the Browns chose Jedrick Wills over Tristan Wirfs. The Browns chose 10th overall. At number 13, Tampa took Wirfs. So it's a matter of being correct and being right on your scouting. Baker went to a great situation. He finished 3rd in the NFL this year in passing. He passed for 4,500 yards. 4,500 yards with our former quarterback. Now, this is where I think Mayfield and Deshaun Watson, it all plays in. When Mayfield got hurt and had a shoulder injury back in 2021, and they kept him playing, that is what changed everything. If they had stopped him after week 3, got his shoulder fixed, if it took surgery, it took surgery. I mean, we had Casey Keenum as backup. Casey Keenum had 87 NFL starts at the time. If we had just played him the rest of the year, got Baker fixed, got him right, then coming in 2022, we would still have Baker Mayfield, and I think we'd still have Baker Mayfield today. Well, if we did, we wouldn't have Deshaun Watson. We would have back our 3 first-round draft picks, our 2 second-round draft picks, our 5th-round draft pick, and look at the 2 teams now. Houston Texans have won their division 2 years in a row. The Cleveland Browns went 3-14. Well, what does that mean? That means they're drafting with our 1st and 2nd round picks, and we're going without 1st and 2nd round picks. So it's pretty obvious what has happened to the flip here. They went from a 4-win team to division winners 2 years in a row. They play this weekend.
Let me take and ask you something about that, what you mentioned with getting Baker's arm fixed. Isn't it on the quarterback himself when he's hurt?
So Cleveland Browns, if they had just stopped, and understand this, when you get 3 first rounds and 2 second rounds, it's not 5 draft picks. You can parlay those and trade down and get other picks. You can make those 5 picks into 20 picks over the 3 years that they had it. So if they see a guy that they like in the 4th round, instead of waiting for him at pick number 25, all they got to do is put a pick with another pick, trade with another team, go up and get him. It's like the Browns got JOK that way. He was sitting there at like 55. Andrew Berry traded to go up and get him. That happens all the time. So it's not just sending 3 firsts and 2 seconds. It's all those other picks that you trade and maneuver. It's how you travel up and down the draft board, because you've got all these high number picks that are at your disposal. What's your thoughts?
I don't know if you heard what I asked or not. When you, as far as Mayfield goes, I remember when he got that shoulder injury. And Mayfield was putting himself in the game. I don't know. I know that they've got the the doctors and stuff around those players. But doesn't it really come down to just the player himself, if he wants to put himself out there or not?
The player's not the boss.
Am I wrong there? I thought
the player,
because it seemed like Mayfield was saying, I want to play. I don't care what. Put me in. And that's why they didn't get the shoulder fixed. At least that was the impression I got. What's that?
Yeah, that's everybody. That's the Emerson family. Martin Emerson, that plays cornerback. I know their family. And when he got concussed in a game this year, I think it was at Cincinnati, the second Cincinnati game. He tried to go into the game. He was going in the game, and somebody pulled him back and said, no, you need to be checked out. He said, I'm fine, I'm fine. They put him in the medical tent. He ended up in the locker room. He was concussed, but he was going in the game, and he kept telling them, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. I can go in. And when they checked him in the locker room, they said, you're concussed. Now, it was a mild concussion. It was called a strain. And then, so that didn't put him in concussion protocol, but it did X him out of that game. Usually concussion protocol is 9 days. Yeah. So a player gets in concussion protocol, he's not in the next game. But because it was a mild concussion, he was back at practice that week, but he was going in the game himself until somebody pulled him out. See, the players don't run the game. Coaches don't run the game. The owners don't run the game. Attorneys run the game. And because attorneys hire doctors, and if doctors say, no, you're going to sit out, that's exactly what's going to happen, because attorneys run the world. And if they run the world, they certainly run the National Football League. So Baker going in, that was the coach's fault of not saying, no, we want to have this checked. And I think at the end of the year, we found out that his shoulder was a lot worse than either was thought or was admitting or the doctor assumed. And he ended up having surgery. Well, you don't have surgery on something that's not mildly wrong. You don't have surgery on a sprained ankle, a sprained middle finger, trying to grab a rebound in basketball. A broken finger, you get it set and, cracked. So I don't think that the players are the boss at all, and why they allowed him to go into the game that year. All of that was a mistake. And because of that mistake, it melded into another mistake. And then here we are today, 14 losses later.
And 17 games in 5 years.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to jump in here for a little bit. So with the coaching staff, specifically Dorsey and Stefanski this past year, was there as much dysfunction as it seemed publicly? And I go back to, there was a report by ESPN earlier this week where it said that players, when the play calling was given up by Stefanski, players didn't know that that it was being given up till Stefanski's press conference that Wednesday, that Dorsey was getting play calling. So is there a disconnect there? Or was there a disconnect?
According to the ESPN piece, which was really good, written by Ted Crow, it actually appeared on also on Cleveland.com. Mm-hmm. Apparently it was. I know Haslam wanted the Browns to be innovators. He wanted them to be leaders on and off the field, which means that they tried different things. And one of those, of course, is analytics. And the Browns are a heavy analytics team. In fact, they're ranked number 2 in the amount of analytics that they go by behind the Philadelphia Eagles. But you know, Dorsey at first was not play calling. He was not being an integral part. He was just kind of like Mike Grable. He was just part of the offense, but not or part of the defense. But he wasn't play calling. I thought the first game that he called a really good game. We won that game. That was the game against the Steelers. And but it looks like he was just dysfunctional all the way up and down. And too many Indians, I guess. What do you think, Evan?
I go along with you on that. It just the continuity simply wasn't there. While you guys been talking, I was just looking over that period where Barry Sanders played. Now, a couple of the quarterbacks that I came up with are, you're right, they're journeymen. One of them was Rodney Peete. The other one was Erik Kramer, and I believe I saw a third one. I think it's Scott Mitchell. I'm going to look at that again.
Yeah.
But you can see these guys were never, to my knowledge, never Pro Bowlers. They never had that. I was looking for the offensive line combos, but we can look at those later. But those are like the leading quarterback and the leading receiver. And again, you hit the nail right on the head there, Barry. I mean, they just at so many positions, not called running back. They're the players that the Lions had during that period. They were average at best. I mean, they had a couple of good seasons here. I mean, 1991 they went 12-4. 95 10-6. Repeated. Actually, did the same in 93. 9-7 in 94 and 97. No, it's not as if that they didn't have their chances. I mean, during that time that Barry Sanders was in the backfield, they had a couple of chances. It's just that the supporting cast around him, you're right, just didn't measure up. So that's why he didn't make it to any Super Bowls or winnings. Most.
Yeah. Barry Sanders went to the playoffs a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Even went to an NFC championship game one year.
Right. Wasn't that 1991? Wasn't that when they made the title game the last time before?
Yep.
Before this good run they've had the last couple of years. Yeah. It was 1991. Yeah.
So and they had some good players. I remember Herman Morrow was a receiver.
That's another name I saw while I was doing the research. Yep.
But the point of it is Dallas surrounded Emmitt Smith with Pro Bowl and All Pro caliber talent. Detroit failed to do that. So Barry Sanders was a superstar on his own. He was an island. He had very little help. That's why all those amazing runs you see, because nobody was helping him block. Nobody was helping him open holes. There was no passing game to help him out. So
we talked a little bit about last year and what the dysfunction could have been or miscommunication between Dorsey and Stefanski. So what's next? What are some names you could see them bringing in for interviews or possibly hiring for coordinator?
For offensive coordinator now that they've
quarterback coach.
Yeah. Well, they've already interviewed one person, and that is tight end coach Tommy Rees. Mm-hmm. They've already interviewed him. He came to the Browns from the University of Alabama, where he was their offensive coordinator the year Nick Saban's final year. So he's had success at offensive coordinator. He knows what offensive coordinator position is like. So that is the first interview that they've had. we'll just see as far as that goes.
But what are some other names?
They've got a short list of guys that they want to bring in to interview. One is Chris Forster. He is the 49ers offensive line coach and run game coordinator. I think if they get Forster, that'd be a home run for Cleveland, especially with the team's offensive state right now, the way the receivers in the running back room is. He's had a long history of producing above average offensive line units, as well as being known as one of the better wide outside zone coaches. I think he'd be an excellent pairing for Kevin Stefanski and his style of offense. Second name I can think of is Zach Cromer. He's the Rams assistant offensive line coach. He is probably one of the best offensive line coaches in the league, and I know that'd be jumping from offensive line coach to offensive coordinator, but he spent a good portion of his career working in a similar offensive scheme to what Kevin Stefanski runs. Third name I can think of is Hank Fraley. He is currently the Lions offensive line coach. He was a Browns center at one time, and he's an up-and-comer. He's turned Detroit's offensive line into one of the better groups in the league. He should be a good one.
Out of all the guys you mentioned, do you think there's one that Stefanski would give up play calling to right away, or do you think there's a chance that any of them could get the play calling right away? Like, is there one that you think is more ready to call plays than the others?
Yeah, well, I think it's a good question. I think it's a good question that is Stefanski going to revert back to be the play caller in himself? We don't know. We just don't know. Like another candidate would be Clint Kubiak from, he's the former Saints offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he brought in somebody, if he would be the play caller, if he would just be Stefanski's mentor, or if he'd just be underneath him and just do everything but the play calling. Another candidate I can think of is former Browns quarterback Josh McCown. He's the Vikings. He's the Vikings quarterback coach right now. He's developed Sam Darnold and did a rejuvenation. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if they brought Alex Van Pelt back from the Patriots, who was the Patriots offensive coordinator. Now, he didn't have an opportunity that I felt with the Browns. And then, of course, the Patriots offense was horrible. But it wouldn't surprise me if they brought him back to at least give him a look-see. Another guy I can think of is the quarterback coach of the Rams, Dave Ragone. He went to St. Ignatius High School and was a quarterback there. So he'd be a hometown boy. That'd be a story. But he spent the last three season as the offense coordinator with the Falcons, but he didn't call plays when Arthur Smith was head coach there. He is calling plays with the Rams. So he's only got 1 year as far as play calling go. But, Stefanski has always been up and down about if somebody else is going to call plays, if he's going to call plays. Unless he brings in somebody that is just a proven play caller, kind of like last year when he's a proven play caller. Unless they get somebody that they know is called plays and been successful at that. I think Stefanski will just go back and call plays on his own. What's your thoughts, Evan?
Agree. He seems inclined to be that type of a person, but I'd say the question was when he did that the previous time. Wasn't there some criticism that he wasn't really able to manage his time really well? He's calling plays. He's trying to manage the team completely. It just sounds to me like that's a large responsibility for a head coach to take on. I guess we could cite some good examples like, let's see here. Who else is calling plays for his respective team? Drawing a blank about the Cowboys head coach now.
McCarthy.
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy. I mean, he was famous for calling.
Andy Reid.
Is there anybody else we can cite?
Reid.
Yeah. Is there anybody else we can cite who is a head coach and is calling his own plays? That would be
Andy Reid.
Next thing I would go.
Yeah, Andy Reid.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good example. But he seems to be able to budget his time. It just seems to me that if you're going to call your own plays and manage all the other particulars about being a head coach, that really requires a special focus and a special mindset about doing all that work, because it seems to me like that probably adds 6 hours to an already long day for a head coach.
Exactly.
All right.
Not only that, you got to have a strong defensive coordinator that you just don't even bother with. You don't even think about during the game. You got to have a strong special teams coach that you don't even think about. You don't even question. You got to let those two guys just strangle hold their units and just let them go. And the entire game, Andy Reid doesn't think about defense. He doesn't think about the punting game. All he thinks about is the offense and what happens in offensive situations, and let everybody else take care of themselves. But you got to have really, really good and trustworthy guys running those two units for you to not have to worry about them all game.
There's a couple of.
Hold on, Pat. Well, how long is the contract for Bill Musgrave? Is he still going to be the senior advisor for Stefanski this year, or what's up with him?
I don't even know if anybody thinks about Bill Musgrave when they're talking about the Browns. It really surprised me that he did not do more with the Browns. I don't know how long his contract is, but he was hired last year and he's still there. I don't know how long his contract is though.
I'd like
But
to.
He's been a play caller.
I have a couple of questions myself that I've been wanting to ask you for quite some time now.
Okay.
Number one, pardon my dog here. She just loves to interrupt me. What are we going to do with Mike Vrabel?
He's gone.
You think he's gone? You think he's gone?
We're going to wish him well.
You pretty much think he's gone, huh?
Yeah, he's definitely gone.
Okay.
His contract ended December the 30th.
Oh. Okay. The other thing that I had question of, say that we get another 5 or 6 games out of Deshaun. What are we doing for the quarterback? I've heard now before you answer that, I've heard several rumors, and like I said, some of the sports groups that I follow are suggesting Kirk Cousins or Mr. Aaron Rodgers. I think those are pretty far fetched. As far as Cousins go, I'd hate to see them bringing recycled stuff in here again. That seems like all we get stuck with. What are we going to do for a quarterback if he don't play?
We are going to bring in a guy that's going to play for $5 million a year.
Any idea who that might be?
I don't have a clue.
Would it be a Kirk Cousins, you think?
It's Kirk Cousins going to pay for $5 million a year.
Well, I mean, if he gets cut, he's with Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's with Atlanta now.
If he gets cut by Atlanta, his contract's guaranteed, isn't it? So he might come here to be with Stefanski. Again, he succeeded in Stefanski's offense in Minnesota. So
Yeah, he certainly did, didn't he?
yeah, so like I could see him coming for $5 million because he's gonna, no matter what, still be getting paid by Atlanta. Correct?
I don't know if that's an all guaranteed contract or not. I don't know what his situation is.
Okay.
I don't have a clue what his situation is. But there are going to be a lot of quarterbacks that have got NFL starts that are NFL caliber. I mean, we could bring Jacoby Brissett back. He's making $8 million a year, but realistically, I tell you, a guy that I know he's old, but Andy Dalton would fit in with us just perfectly for 1 year. And I think he'd be an upgrade to anybody that we could bring in, put him on the bench. He's getting paid $5 million a year with Carolina this year. He had some starts. I know he's old. I think he's almost 38 years old. But I think that'd be an excellent guy to bring in that's not going to throw, 2-3 interceptions a game like like Jameis Winston is. Joe Flacco loved him when he came in, but if he's going to play another year, I don't know if he is, but if he's going to play another year, he wants to start. That's why he didn't stay with Cleveland. He wanted to go to a team that had an opportunity to start, and he got some starts. But I think that ship has sailed. I don't think Flacco to Cleveland again is going to be what we need. Somebody like Carson Wentz. Here's a name I can throw out to you. What about Jimmy Garoppolo?
Oh,
yeah. I've always wanted him here to begin with.
Once you're hurt, you're hurt. And I guess that sticks with Deshaun too. You're more likely to get hurt after getting hurt once. And Garoppolo has been hurt like multiple times in the last couple of years. Like glue factory.
Yeah.
So
What do you think,
why...
Evan? What do you think, Evan? Garoppolo to the Browns?
As a backup, maybe. As a backup,
That's what we're talking about as a backup.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, have him go through a physical and tell me if he can still play. That would really
I heard his old coach Bill Belichick was available, but he actually went to college now.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me ask you this. Both Justin Fields and Russell Wilson are going to be available after this year. Would you entertain the idea to sign either one?
Justin Fields for sure.
I'd take both of them.
You take both of them.
I think Russell's too old.
I think I'd take either one. Not so much Wilson, but Justin Fields in a heartbeat.
Yeah. All right. What
I
about
think he would fit Stefanski's offense perfectly. Because whoever ends up being the OC they're running Stefanski's offense if he lets them call plays. It's going to be some variation of the Stefanski offense.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of names I can throw out there too. These are some young guys. These are some very young guys that were highly anticipated, highly drafted. Zach Wilson and Trey Lance. Any interest in either one of those?
Wilson, no.
Trey Lance, probably.
I would give Trey Lance an opportunity if he can stay healthy. What wasn't he hurt in like the last couple of years?
Yeah, he's been with Dallas. He got traded from the Niners to Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
I think they sent like a 5th or a 6th round pick for him.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, Carson Wentz is only 32 years old. He's only getting paid $3.3 million this year on the Kansas City Chiefs. He is Mahomes' backup. Mm-hmm. So see that's what Cleveland is going to need and want is somebody to back up Watson, to bring in that's got NFL starts, that's got experience that you can plug in. They're not going to be like DTR and not have a clue of how to go through progressions. You're going to need a guy that's got experience to come in and be the guy. I like Cooper Rush of the backup for Dallas. I think he could be.
I'd take him.
He's got a good win-loss record. He's got a good win-loss record. So, see, those are the kind of guys that we're definitely going to get a name guy. We're definitely going to get a guy that you know who he is, but we're not going to pay him but $3, $4, $5 million a season. We're not going to get Sam Darnold, who's going to want $10 million a year, because it's just too much money that you got invested into one position. Because if you get a guy that's worth his money, I'm not saying Sam Darnold's not worth $10 million. If you get somebody that's worth his money, then you got to cut otherwise. So that means that maybe we got to get rid of Denzel Ward, or maybe we got to get rid of Wyatt Teller, or Jack Conklin, or you know, Dalvin Tomlinson, or somebody that you want to keep, but because you got two guys that are making all this money at quarterback and you're only playing one, you got to get rid of these other guys. So that's the trick.
You just wait for Deshaun to not play 3 or 4 games, and you can give this guy that extra money from the insurance, you know.
Yep.
I mean, $48 million, that's what, about $1.5 million a game, I would think.
Yeah.
I'd play. Yeah, you add that to the 5. Oh, that's almost $7.5 million. 6.5, 7. I'd play for that.
A person can live on $1 million. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't, there's something wrong.
So, we talked a little bit about this off the air. I have seen there's 2 executives below Andrew Berry that are being considered or being interviewed as candidates for the Titans job of GM. And that would be Glenn Cook and Kathleen Reiche, or the current assistant general manager. I forget her name. I thought that was
her. That was her maiden name. She's now Catherine Hickman.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Yes, she is the assistant GM
mm-hmm.
and the vice president of football operations for the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
So she's right below Andrew Berry. She's a bulldog. She's an absolute bulldog. She was born in Canada. She began her football career in the CFL. She was born in, her maiden name is Rach. She was born in Montreal, and her brother played offensive tackle for the high school in Montreal, and she played girls flag football. So she's got football in her veins. She's got a master's degree in taxation, and her father was a tax agent, and she thought that's the way she was going to go. She ended up being getting a law degree. So she is actually a registered an attorney. And if you know anything about attorneys, they're all smart. All of them are extremely smart. Her at one time, she was hired as general manager of the Toronto Argonauts of the Canadian Football League. She was the second woman to ever be named GM of a professional football team ever. And we're talking about any league. So she's already been there, done that. She ended up being a front office position with the Tampa Bay Vipers of the XFL. And then that team moved to Los Angeles. And then she got a job with the Philadelphia Eagles to become the vice president of football ops. And that's when she worked with Andrew Berry. Andrew Berry went from the Browns to the Eagles, back to the Browns. So the Browns is just a stepping stone for her. If she ended up a very first female to be named general manager of any NFL club ever.
And I mean, sounds like she has the background. And
yeah, and she's a bulldog. Oh, I forgot to tell you, in 2022, she was interviewed for the GM position of the Minnesota Vikings, but did not get it. So she's been a GM. She's interviewed for an NFL GM, and she's vice president GM as we speak.
Was that when Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah was hired by the Vikings?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. How about Glenn Cook? What's like I know he's been candidate for a couple years, at least interview wise. Like, what's his background?
Well, Cook is employed by the Browns as we speak. He's a candidate for the GM job on that. He came through the NFL through the Accelerator program, which is where they do leadership development workshops. He's in his third season as assistant GM and vice president of player personnel. Years. He spent the previous 4 years with the Browns as their assistant director of pro scouting. So he's been from washing dishes all the way up to the penthouse. So he's learned to make strategic football decisions. Right now, what he does is he leads the day-to-day operations. Mainly, his biggest contributions is during the free agency and also the NFL draft processes. During the season, he aids in the management of the operational functions of the team. There's a lot of things that go on with the team that we just don't see, like when they have to pack up equipment and if they got a game in Baltimore and all that's got to be taken. Well, they take people with them as well. They don't just take staff. They take all kind of front office people that have to do all kind of accelerator jobs and player personnel jobs that are on the road as well as being at home. But he's been with the organization a long time. He's paid his dues, and we'll just see if if he's one of the ones that they decide is right for their team. I think Hickman will be the choice if they choose between two. She's got the most decision-making experience because she's already been a GM. She's already been an assistant GM for an NFL team. So, but we'll just see.
And of course, I was about to ask a question, and there it goes. If I come back with if the question comes back to me, I'll ask. But let's get into the draft a little bit.
All right.
What I know you said you had some intel on the draft, or something, a nugget on the draft, when we were talking before the show.
Yeah. Today, it came out that somebody, let me see who that was, but somebody was, let me look and see. Ben Axelrod, on the Dan Levitard show.
Mm-hmm.
Diana Rossini said, as a guest on that show, this is what she said, and I'm gonna read a quote here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The Browns are going quarterback. They see what we see. It's just not a mystery. This is not like we're psyched about Deshaun Watson's ability, leadership, or play. They know this isn't great. So,
go ahead.
What do y'all think about if the Browns chose a quarterback with the number 2 pick?
I wouldn't mind it, and I feel like this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier by the Browns admitting they messed up badly with the Deshaun Watson, because obviously she's not just pulling that out of thin air. She has sources within the team. Diana is one of the most,
Trusted.
she's what?
Trusted.
Yeah, thank you. Most trusted and trusted reporters out there. Credible is where I was going, but yeah, okay. Trusted and credible reporters out there. So obviously she's not pulling out of thin air. So there has to be somebody or multiple people telling her that for her to come out and report that. She's not just going to go off of one source and be like, this is what I'm told. Those people are going off of 3 or 4 sources before they come out and report it. I mean, or am I wrong?
No, you're completely right. And the reason behind that is because if they don't come out, and it looks good, then nobody pays attention to them. If you're just spewing off stuff, then everybody go, oh, yeah, him. Her again. Oh, him again. Mm-hmm. So you're exactly right. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I usually follow Mary Kay Cabot. She seems like she's pretty decent as far as reporting like that. It's I got mixed emotions about them. At least this year, taking that, using that number 2 pick for that. I think there's other needs that should be taken care of before you'd pick a quarterback like that, especially the weakness in this quarterback round. And this isn't we all got to admit this isn't the best round for a quarterback. That's probably going to come in a year or so. is there something worth the number 2 pick out there? That's the question. I'm thinking more of a defensive, something for the defensive side. Maybe something to either help Myles Garrett or replace him. And
Offensive tackle.
I'm looking. I look at this stuff and I think, there's other needs here, and I'm looking at longevity. You've got Garrett's getting old, Wills is getting old, Conklin's getting old, Denzel Ward's getting old.
Wyatt Teller.
Wyatt Teller's another one. That's 5 players now out of.
Yep.
Well,
And
just to jump in, you said about Wills, Pat. He's gone, so he's a free agent after the 24 season. So he's going to be a free agent in a couple months.
Good for him. The whole thing comes down to you got to start looking at a little longevity here, and you're going to have to replace some of these players anyway. And why not get a good one and build around it? If you took the quarterback, fine, but is there a quarterback that actually should be rated at 2? What do you think, Barry?
Well, I think it's all in the eye of the beholder. Why do we date the women we date? Why do we marry the women we date?
Because she's cute. She's cute and she makes me laugh.
Yeah, you may marry her because of her cooking. I might marry her because of her legs. Who knows? But we all, and both of them won Evan. That's the bad part.
But Evans, he's got such a personality for radio. Women swoon over him.
All right. Well, I am not an expert on the college draft. I never am, because I don't watch a whole lot of college games and I don't study college film. So what I rely on this time of year is draft sites, and they're the ones. It's their business. It's their website. It's their sponsors. It's their endorsements that keep them going. And just looking at some draft sites, I've got Pro Football Focus, and their first quarterback they have ranked. I'm still scrolling down. Is Cam Ward at number 19. So they've got 18 players ahead of Cam Ward. Then they've got the Sanders kid at number 29. Okay, let's look at another big board from another site that I trust. This is called Tankathon. They have Sanders at number 3. They have Cam Ward at number 7. That's their big board. CBS.com. They've got a mock draft. They've got Cam Ward going to the Titans and Sanders going to the Browns. Let's look at another one. Walter Football. Cam Ward, they've got Sanders going to the Titans and Cam Ward going to the Browns. They flip-flopped those. So let's look at one more. This is Draft Countdown. I trust them a lot. They don't have a quarterback listed until number 20. So, and it's everybody's opinion. I think what the Browns should do is one of two things. Personally, if I was them, I would take best player available.
Exactly.
Because their needs are so great. It's like Erik said, offensive tackle. I would draft offensive tackle first round, offensive guard second round. I would draft that every year in and year out. Defensive line, offensive line, first round, second round, first round. So I would do that. I would be a horrible GM because I would have that every year. I think that a team needs to build from the lines out, because your offensive line dictates what your offense does. We had 66 sacks this year. We were leading the league in sacks until the last game when the Bears beat us. When your sacks go up and your pressures go up, when your quarterback hits go up, then your completions go down, your interceptions go up, your passing yards go down, your rushing yards are weak because you're throwing the ball too much, because your running game's not doing. Your third down conversions are horrible. We led the league in the fewest third down conversions. The entire year, we were horrible at it. That is because of a bad offensive line. We had, we had one guy make the Pro Bowl off the offense, and that was Jerry Jeudy. Everything else was either defense, and that was it. And Jerry Jeudy just had certain games because of Jameis Winston. Now, when Jameis Winston quit playing, Jerry Judy's numbers went in the toilet. So he did all that during the 8 games at Winston. And within Winston, we were 30-plus points and 400 yards throwing. Then when we get DTR, we're scoring 3 and 10 points. We're barely making 200 yards passing yards. So the quarterback means everything. So I think best player available, I would go with offensive tackle, but I would either go with best player available or I would trade down. And the reason I would trade down is because like Erik, I believe we need an offensive tackle. I believe we need a defensive edge rusher or a defensive tackle. And if we trade down from the number 2 position, we might can get Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan, who's probably going to be somewhere around the 5th pick, or we can get the Louisiana offensive tackle, Will Campbell. He's 6'6", 323 pounds. Between those two, he's going to be available around 6, 7, 8. So if we traded with somebody and went from 2 to, say, 6 or 2 to 8 and got another second-round pick and another third-round pick, then we can get our other player that we need along the defensive line, or maybe even our quarterback. I'll tell you who's going to be available in the 3rd round. It's going to be Notre Dame's quarterback and Ohio State's quarterback. I mean, both of those could be good, players for us with some development. Well, if Deshaun Watson's going to be our quarterback this year, and maybe in 2026, give him 2 years, the 3rd year, he's off and running. Joe Montana was a 3rd-round pick. Russell Wilson was a 3rd-round pick. Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. So you can get good guys, in later rounds.
I don't see the kid from Ohio State being drafted. I just don't think he's good enough. I don't think he can throw open a receiver. His passes always look like the receiver has to slow the route or stop to catch the ball. I just personally don't think the kid from Ohio State is worth it. But it's ironic that you bring up the trade down, because I was just about to ask you about the possibility of trading down before you mentioned that. But I've got
Will Howard ranked it. What?
Oh, Jackson Dart. What do you think of him?
Justin Dart?
Jackson, from, I forget where he's from, but he's another quarterback coming out.
Oh, Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
From Ole Miss?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it depends on where you want to try to take a guy. I think you can get like in the fourth round, a guy like Curtis O'Rourke from the University of Indiana. I think he'd be a great one. I think you can get Jackson Dart, 6th round. And I know Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round. But I can't think of anybody else that was, worthy enough that came out of that. But I really like Curtis Rourke from Indiana. Quinn Ewers from Texas, he should be a 4th rounder. And Kirk Cousins was a 4th rounder. So there are guys that you can bring in these. It doesn't always have to be a 1st round guy. I mean, Deshaun Watson was a 1st round guy, and here we are dissing on him. Kirk Cousins was a 4th round guy. But look, RG3 was a 1st round guy, and where is he? He's doing commentary. I tell you, a guy I do not like, and a guy that I would not draft, and he'll be available in the 3rd round, is Alabama's quarterback, Morrow.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you take away his running game, I think you've boxed him in.
Yeah, I agree. I am surprised to hear that you would say Quinn Ewers could be a 4th round pick. I mean, I've seen him in the top.
He does it in 20 yards. Yeah, he can throw those darts that are short, but he can't throw that 40-yarder without any accuracy. But Jalen Milrow, you take around his legs, and his game is done.
Wow. Yeah.
What do you think?
Speaking of college, what do you think the last two is going to be? Ohio State and Notre Dame, or Ohio State and Penn State?
Well, it's definitely going to be Ohio State. I think Ohio State's going to win it all. You don't pay $20 million and not win the whole championship, and that's what they're paying their players. I think the Penn State Notre Dame game is going to be close. I don't think it's going to be a huge scoring game. I think it's going to be more of a defensive game, something like 20-14, 20-10, 21-20. But it's going to be an exciting game. I think it's going to be a better game than the Texas-Ohio State game. I'm going to pick Notre Dame. I think their offense is a bit better, but Penn State's got a great defense, so it's going to be nip and tuck right there. And you know what's weird is how both of those teams' uniforms are like so traditional. It's like if you go back to like the first year that they played in like 1898 or something, I think they were still playing in those uniforms.
That's crazy.
You agree with that?
Yeah.
They may be.
I mean, the only difference is now they're using real gold for helmets instead of the gold spray paint.
What do you think? What do you think, Evan? Who's going to win?
I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think OSU is going to come out on top. I heard some commentary earlier in the day about Notre Dame and Penn State matching up. That to me, I think you're right, is the probably two semifinal games. That's the more intriguing matchup because they just seem to be more evenly matched. And I think just based on competition alone, that's what I would tune in.
I'd truly rather see Ohio State versus Penn State. In the last 7 quarters against Ohio State, Penn State's only scored once.
Yeah.
So
it'll be strange to see a non-SEC championship.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the way it's worked out this year. Because I tell you what, Georgia absolutely got spanked. Georgia got spanked. Alabama got spanked in their bowl game. Tennessee got spanked. South Carolina got spanked in their bowl game. All of those I thought were good teams. So,
I think
and the only team you got left is Texas. And really, if you think about it, Texas has only been in the SEC 1 year. So
yeah.
they're really an outsider playing in the E SEC.
And Notre Dame is interesting since they're they're not kind of, but they are independent. Like they're not in a conference.
Yeah.
So
Can I say something about the NFL draft again?
yeah, definitely.
I would love. Now I've heard that the Tennessee Titans are in love with Cam Ward. I've heard that they're just absolutely. Which Miami was the number one offensive team in all of college football this year. The number one team, number one passing team, number one running team. They just blew everybody apart. Okay. But as a friend of mine, that's a Clemson season ticket holder, said, you're only as good as who you play. And when you're playing against Duke and Wake Forest and East Carolina, yes, you're going to throw for 450 yards. Yes, you're going to run for 260 yards. But if they take if the Tennessee Titans pick number one and pick Cam Ward, and if the Browns keep their pick, I don't see how there's any way that they can not take Travis Hunter. I just don't.
That would be a great pick.
I think he's the number one player in the draft. And if we got him at number two, Barry Sanders was drafted the second player in the draft. Michael Jordan was drafted the second player in the draft. So mistakes do happen.
But is Deion Sanders really helping him out and gonna have him dictate who, like he's doing with his son possibly, that there's a couple teams that he won't let his son go to, and I'm pretty sure he's kind of the, for lack thereof a better term, agent also for Travis Hunter. So is he going to say both Shadar and Travis are not going to the Browns?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what in any of that. I'm just saying that if we stick, I would love to have the offensive tackle, Kelvin Banks, from Texas. I'd like to have the offensive lineman from LSU. I think both of those would solve our problem. And here's what I'm thinking as far as the offensive line goes. We've got to get a tackle in the first or the second round. We have got to get a tackle, because let's just say that the season starts with the four starters and then DeJuan Jones at left tackle. That sounds like a good unit, right?
Mm-hmm.
DeJuan Jones has played 2 years and has been hurt twice. How many times has Jack Conklin been hurt? So we're going to have a need for a swing tackle that we've got to bring in somebody. Ohio State's Josh Simmons in the second round would be a great pick. If we took Travis Hunter in the first round, took Josh Simmons is 6'5", 310. I think he'd do a great job. So if we took Travis Hunter in the first round, that gives us another starting great job. I think he was a fourth round pick. I like him. I think he fills in real good. But is he a starter or is he a slot? Is he the nickel? Is he the dime guy? If we bring in somebody like Hunter and stick him immediately on the edge with Denzel and Emerson, and Denzel and Emerson and Hunter, dude, you know that Andrew Berry, there's two things that he drafts every year. That's defensive back and a wide receiver. Well, Hunter's both. That check both boxes to where Andrew Berry can say, well, I don't need a defensive back. I don't need a wide receiver and so that it can go to somebody else.
But at the same time, usually guys only play one position, and maybe I'm just missing out on what you're saying, and so sorry.
Well, Hunter plays two ways.
Yeah, I know in college, but
in college.
You usually don't players going to the NFL or in the NFL usually stick to one side or the other. You don't usually see one guy playing both sides in the NFL. Or am I wrong?
Anymore.
Yeah.
No, you're pretty right. There have been some guys, the guy named Jordan that played for the Atlanta Falcons, Deion Sanders, played some wide receiver when he was with Atlanta when he first came into the league. He didn't when he went to San Francisco. He did when he went to Dallas. He played some wide receiver and also with cornerback. And I don't know what Travis Hunter will do. I don't know what his agent's going to let him do. I don't know what he wants to do. But I just know that in college, he is a two-way player. Mm-hmm. But his strength is playing cornerback.
Okay.
But he will also play wide receiver. So, if they want to stick him at wide receiver, it's that's depends on the coaches. That depends on the player. When that got, at one time, all players played both sides of the ball. Do you know what changed that?
What?
1946, the All-American Football Conference came into existence. They put 8 teams in, and one of the teams was the Cleveland Browns, one was the San Francisco 49ers, and the other was the Baltimore Colts, along with 5 other teams. Well, at the time, the NFL, everybody played both ways. You were only allowed 3 substitutions per game. That came from soccer. That came from rugby. Rugby and soccer only allows, if you watch international and World Cup matches, you only got 3 substitutes a game unless they're playing a friendly. And so that's the way the NFL was. Well, from 1946 to 1949, the AAFC allowed unlimited substitutions. When those 3 teams merged into the NFL in 1950, the NFL changed its rule and allowed unlimited substitution. Before that, what happened is if you needed to go out or you needed to be stitched up or you were hurt, you laid on the field along the sideline and they attended to you. And your team played 10 against 11 until you were able to stand back up and go back in the huddle. That's when it changed.
Mm.
That's when men were men.
That's when men were men. And the last player to go both ways was Ray Nitschke of the Green Bay Packers. He played center and he also played middle linebacker. That was in the 60s. So other players still played both ways. It's like your kicker and your punter and your long snapper. They were all other players. Lou the Toe Groza was center and linebacker, but he also kicked. The punter was usually your quarterback or a safety.
Imagine that being in this day and age.
For one, players would want more money.
Yep.
Do you remember that player that? Do you remember that kicker from Oakland? That
Blanda, George Blanda.
George Blanda. That's what I was trying to think of.
Okay.
I hated to see that guy retire. He could still be playing now.
Yeah, he could. He could. He might have to use a walker to go on the field, but he could still kick the ball.
That's about right. I bet he could still kick it. He was so dangerous. And every time he'd get on the field, man, 50, 60 yards out, done.
Yeah. Yeah. He was 48 when he retired. Yeah. And he was still playing quarterback some too. That's what he was a quarterback.
Yeah.
And then got older, he went straight to, of course, back then it was straightaway kickers. It wasn't soccer style. It wasn't sidewinders.
Yeah. What a way to go.
So I would love to see the Browns take Travis Hunter, but I'd also like to see them trade down if they could get an offensive tackle and gain some other picks.
It would be interesting to draft Hunter, put him at receiver, and let him develop a couple years with Jerry Jeudy here, and then see what he can do when Jerry's contract is up. So
yeah, absolutely. Because I believe that we're going to go into the season without Elijah Moore. His contract is up. I don't think they're going to re-sign him. I wouldn't re-sign him if I was them. He's an average guy. Now he had 102 targets this year, but he only caught 56% of the passes thrown to him. So I think we're going to go in with Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, and then we're going to need a slot guy. And I know they'd like to either get David Bell or Jamari Thrash and put one of those players in the slot. But Henry would definitely be a slot guy. He's only 185 pounds, but he can fly.
with that, it's about time to wrap it up. But I know Barry has an idiom that he would like to share.
Yeah, I am going to share you with a football idiom. But we all know that idioms are words that we all know what they mean, but they have nothing to do with whatever it's about. Like when you give somebody the cold shoulder, that came from serving a guest that you didn't like, the shoulder part of the animal, and you served it cold to them because you hoped that they would spend the night and then head out the next day and not hang around for a week or so. So now that all the games are done, and now that it's the playoffs, I'm going to give you where the word playoff came from. We know that the better teams are rewarded with a playoff spot. And of course, that leads to a championship game for that season. Well, the word off is an English word which describes to finish completely. And the word play means to commence. So to begin. So the word playoff is to begin, to finish completely. Well, the origins were describing drinking alcohol until it was completely gone. The first printed image of the word playoff was in 1607, and their meaning of the word playoff was to finish off. Well, in 1901, in Munsey's Magazine of New York, was the first version of in sports when it talked about a tennis match and an article, and it says, we're going to play off for the Wilcox Cup. Since then, all other sports have used the word play off.
Ooh, wow.
Interesting. Never knew where that came from. Barry, thank you for spending the night with us, or spending the evening with us. This was a very educational show as usual, and I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming in with us.
I thoroughly had a good time.
You're always welcome back, man. It's you know that.
Yeah, the site I write for is dogsbynature.com, DSBY nature.com. Tomorrow, I've got an article on 5 veteran Browns players that I don't expect to be back in 2025 training camp. But we have articles every single day anything that happens, it's like today it was announced that Myles Garrett was named NFL All-Pro as well. I think that's his third distinction of being named All-Pro. That came out today. But you'll get news every day. It's just like a daily newspaper. News and stories don't sit on our site for more than 24 hours, but you'll get Browns news every single day about just about everything. I thoroughly enjoyed my time, and I'm going to wish that you have your fire roaring and your coffee mugs are full of hot beverage, and everybody stay warm.
Okay.
Take care, Barry. Have a good evening, sir. Evan, you want to wrap it?
Okay. Everybody, thank you tuning in to the Now Second podcast. We really appreciated you staying with us. We hope you learned something. I know I did. And until the next time, have a good night, everybody.
Give it to you, Eric.
Well, Evan said it well, better than I could. But obviously, we thank Barry. Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Pat, for, co-hosting and producing, because without you, we wouldn't be on.
I feel so important.
Then, pat myself on the back, because,
Yeah, we all love you, Eric. You know that, bud.
I know. No, but in all seriousness, thank you everybody for listening, and hope everybody had happy holidays, had a great new year, and with that, we'll talk to you in 2 weeks. No,
Monday night.
We're gonna do an Ohio State show, so I'm gonna see if I could get an Ohio State guest, whether it's Tyler or somebody else. But with that, thank you for listening and have a good night, everybody.
The whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan, we don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan. We're from Ohio, we're from Ohio, we're from Ohio. Oh, we don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan. We don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan. We're from Ohio.